Let's talk about how to add real numbers. In this video, you will learn how to add the numbers with the same sign, meaning two positives and two negatives. Add the numbers with a different sign, one positive, other negative. We will also use the order of operations with the real numbers, and we will translate the word and phrases that indicates the addition. Let's get started. First, rule number one. Rule number one is for the same sign when the two numbers are positive or two numbers are negative and you're trying to add. You add the numbers and you want to keep the sign. That's all you need to remember. When we're adding the numbers, we're adding in terms of absolute value, especially if the numbers are negative. Here's an example. 9 and 6, both positive. You want to add, which is 15. Sign will stay positive because both the numbers are positive. Negative 7 plus negative 4 is negative 11. In terms of absolute value, negative 7 will become positive 7, negative 4 will become positive 4. So we are adding 7 and 4 to get the 11 first. Because both the numbers are negative, my final answer will also stay negative. So easy to remember, just add the numbers and keep the sign same. Let's try some examples on our own now. Let me get the pen here. Now keep in mind the parentheses should not make any difference. Negative 3 and negative 5, you will add first, which will give me 8, and then you want to keep the sign negative. So that's negative 8. 4 plus 6 is going to be 10, positive 10. Negative 3 and negative 2 is first you add, which is 5, and you want to keep the sign, which is negative. So the answer stays negative. Parenthesis is just used to separate the two signs, positive and negative. Otherwise, number 1 is exactly the same type as number 3. Let's look at the rule number 2 now. Rule number 2 is used for the opposite sign. One number is a positive, other number is a negative. In that case, we will always use the larger sign for our final answer. We have to subtract the numbers this time. Here's an example. 8 plus negative 5. So first I'll find the difference between 8 and 5. If I have to subtract 8 and 5, I will get 3. 8 and negative 5 in terms of absolute value, 8 is a bigger number, which is positive. Your sign will stay positive 3. So remember, your final answer will have a sign for the bigger number. Second example, 4 plus negative 9. The difference of 9 and 4, you will see, is going to be 5. In terms of absolute value, 4 and negative 9 has a bigger value, which is a negative number. The final answer will stay negative. So remember that whichever number is bigger in the terms of absolute value, the final answer will have that sign. But opposite numbers with the opposite sign, we always subtract. Let's try more examples. Here I have 12 and negative 22. Keep in mind, the sign will be negative because 22 is a bigger number in terms of absolute value. And then if I subtract, I'm going to get 10. Negative 20 and 35. 35 is a bigger number in the terms of absolute value. Answer will be staying positive. So if I find the difference of 35 and 20, I'm going to get 15. Negative 70 and 15. 70 is a bigger in terms of absolute value. Final answer will stay negative. Difference of 70 and 15 should be 55. Negative 8 and 8. They're exactly same. So when you add, you're going to just get a 0. Anytime two numbers are exactly same, the opposite sign, they turn to be 0. Now let's try the mixed problem. So here I have combined both the rules that we have learned. Now let's go over this again. Look at the first example. They're the same sign. Both are negative, which means I'm going to use rule number 1. My sign stays negative. And this time I'm adding. Rule number 1, you add. Rule number 2, you subtract. So the answer is going to be 27 negative. Second problem, one number is a positive, other number is a negative, so I'm going to subtract. Now, when I subtract, I'm going to get 8. The bigger number is 30, so answer stays positive 8. A negative and a positive, same number, it's going to be just a 0. We do not have to worry about the sign. Last one, negative 9.5 is a negative and a positive number. We will subtract. The difference will be 6.3. Let's first write the difference and then we'll decide the sign. So sign negative 9.5 is a bigger number in the terms of absolute value. The sign will stay negative 6.3. So hopefully it's cleared now, the rule number 1 and 2, because we're ready to jump on the order of operation. Let's get started there. Here's our first example. Please keep in mind that please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You need to do the parentheses first. So I'll bring down the negative 7 as is and then put the plus sign. 10 plus negative 3 according to the rule number 2 will give me positive 7. Obviously negative 7 and a positive 7 should give you 0. Let's try one more example on order of operation. Here we go. We have 2 parentheses here, this 1 and this 2. So before I add, I'll take care of the parentheses first. In the first parenthesis, both the numbers are negative. So that's telling me to use the rule 1. 5 and 4, I'm going to add, and that's going to be 9. Let me write this again. So it's negative 9. 5 and 4, you add, it will be 9. Bring down the negative sign. Put the plus sign as is. 9 and negative 2, the difference is going to be 7, and it's a positive 7. This 9 is a bigger in terms of absolute value. Negative 9 and 7, again, you will use the rule number 2. The difference is going to be 2. The sign will be negative. So one more time, we have used both the rules. First, I did rule 1 here. That's how I got negative 9. I did rule 2 here. That's how I got 7. And again, to get the negative 2, I use the rule number 2. Let's look at the fractions now. First, we're going to add the fractions with the same sign. So I'm going to use the rule number 1. Now, the parentheses used just to differentiate the 2 signs together. But if you want to remove the parenthesis while working on the problem, that's absolutely fine. So first of all, we realize that the denominators are different in this example. Negative 2 over 5 plus negative 1/2. The denominator must be same in order to add any fraction. So I will find first the LCD for 5 and 2. The number which is in 5 times table also in 2 times table. My LCD will equal 10. Now the first fraction, in order to get the 10, I must multiply my 5 by 2 on the bottom. Same thing I'm going to do on the top. Second fraction, I have 2 on the bottom. In order to get the 10, I must multiply my denominator by 5. Same thing I will do on the top. Let's see that step. So you see that I have multiplied 2, both the top and the bottom here, and I multiply by 5, both the top and the bottom here. Go ahead and multiply now the numerator, numerator, denominator, denominator, numerator, numerator, denominator, denominator. 2 times negative 2 will give you negative 4 and then over 10. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5 over 10. Or if you don't know about the multiplications rule yet, just keep the sign on the top as is and just multiply the numbers 2 and 2, 5 and 1. Now this makes alike fractions. As you can see, the denominator is the same. You want to keep it same and you want to use the rule number 1 on the top. And therefore, my answer should be negative 9 over 10. Negative 9 over 10 is already in the lowest term, which means I don't have to reduce furthermore. Let's try one more example on fraction, this time with a different sign. So I can show you rule number 2 can be used on the numerators. Here's the example. 5 over 8 is a positive plus negative 17 over 12 is a negative fraction. So I'm going to use rule number 2. Once again, the denominators don't match, which will require me to find the LCD. For 8 and 12, the LCD, the number which goes into both times table, will be your number 24. Let's multiply the first fraction top and bottom both by 3. And let's multiply the second fraction top and bottom by 2. This is what you will see. Multiply 3 and 5 to get 15. 3 times 8, 24 for first fraction. 2 times 17 is going to be 34. Just keep the sign negative. Over 2 times 12 will be 24. Now, as you can see, you will apply the rule number 2 on the top. We will subtract the number, keep the sign to be negative because 34 is a bigger number. Final answer should be negative 19 over 20. And once again, you cannot reduce it. It's already in the lowest term. Let's look at the word phrases that indicates the addition. This time we will write and we will simplify. The phrases are adding or add, plus, increased by, more than, and sum of. One thing when you add, it doesn't really matter in which order you add. The answer will still remain the same. You have to be careful when you do subtraction. In adding, the order does not matter that much. The answer will still remain the same. Here's our first example. The sum of negative 3 and 5 and negative 12. Basically, we're adding all these three numbers. So here I put the parentheses around negative 12, but if you chose not to, it will be completely fine. Negative 3 plus 5 should give you positive 2. Positive 2 and negative 12 should give you negative 10. If you even add negative 3 and negative 12 first, just to show you, it will be negative 15. Negative 15 plus 5, it will be still negative 10. So in which order you add, it should not matter. Here's a second example. Negative 2 added to the sum of negative 18 and 11, which means you're adding negative 2 to the sum of negative 18 and 11. I'm going to put negative 18 and 11 in a parenthesis because I'm going to find the sum first before I add that to negative 2. This is how I chose to write. Once again, you can remove the parenthesis if you chose to. Negative 18 plus 11 will give me negative 7. Negative 2 and negative 7 should give you negative 9. Regardless of if you add negative 2 and negative 18, you will get negative 20. Negative 20 plus 11 still should give you negative 9. Let's try one more example. 0.85 more than the sum of negative 1.25 and negative 4.75. In this case, I'll put the parentheses around negative 1.25 and negative 4.75 because I'm going to add those first. Here we go. 0.85 plus inside the parentheses, as you can see, I put both my decimals. Now I'm going to use rule number 1 inside the parentheses. Both are negative, so I'm going to go ahead, add $1.25, $4.75. That should give you $6 and then keep the sign negative. You can put the parentheses around. I did not. Either way, it should be fine. Now I have 0.85 and I have a negative number, a one positive and a negative number. You want to subtract. Subtracting $6 take away 85 cents should give you $5.15. The answer will stay negative because 6 is, in terms of absolute value, is a bigger number. Please repeat the video as needed. And hopefully this video helps you to find adding the real numbers.